Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. And in today's video, I want to talk to you about thinking versus feeling and why it's important for the Masculina Boss Babe to make this shift. Before we do that, let's get back into tea time, my favorite. So I have my little teapot over here. This is in my Amazon store and I already removed the diffuser. I've made a blend of spearmint and nettle tea today. I like to drink that blend daily when I need to. So here we have our little teacup. Take a little sip and let's go ahead and review who the Masculina Boss Babe is for just a moment before we dive into today's topic. So you can check out my previous videos on the Masculina Boss Babe, or if you've been following me on Instagram, you've heard me talk about her. But she is a very successful, high achieving woman who is extremely impressive. I'm impressed. She inspires me. I adore her. And she's also a type of woman that I have been working with for about 15 years. So I know this woman very well. She does not need my help with her professional life. She is extremely successful and high achieving, as I've already stated. But she is so, how do I say this, wrapped up in her professional role that she has lost her confidence in herself and specifically in her femininity as a woman. So the reason why I call her the Masculina Boss Babe is because she comes to me saying, I feel masculine. I feel like a boss, and I'm really happy about that. And I don't want to let that part of myself go. But when it comes to being outside of work or even sometimes at work, I don't feel confident in my femininity. I feel like I'm projecting too much masculine energy and I just feel like I'm out of balance. So it's really important that you keep in mind on this channel, number one, I am very pro women and I am pro men. I want everyone to be healthy, wealthy, and successful. So I am not encouraging the Masculina Boss Babe to stop being successful, to stop wanting to achieve, to stop be high performing. What we are talking about is bringing balance back so that the Masculina Boss Babe feels like a goddess. And a goddess is, in my opinion, when I picture a modern day goddess archetype of a woman, she does have an empire. Absolutely. She has power, influence, success, right? Business acumen. She is multifaceted and multidimensional. So please just understand that that is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is giving that woman who feels like she's burnt out, she's, like I said, maybe functioning with low grade anxiety. Um, she's just not feeling confident in herself as a woman. When she puts on a pair of heels, she doesn't want to always walk in them like she's walking into a meeting. She wants to channel a little Sophia Loren, some Marilyn Monroe. Monica Bellucci is another name that comes up quite often. Angelina Jolie is a wonderful example of a highly feminine, highly successful woman. Rihanna, Diane Carroll. There are so many to choose from, okay? But the point here is that we are not removing those qualities that have helped you to be successful because you're going to stay successful. But now we're adding that goddess type of energy, that femininity that's just going to take it to another level because you're going to be embodied. It's a different type of confidence. Okay. So knowing that, let's talk about today's concept, thinking versus feeling, because one of the key indicators that a woman is in her masculine energy or is a masculine boss babe is that she's overthinking. She is overthinking and she is living in her head. She's living in her head, and you can tell in conversation through the words that she chooses and in her body language. She's very forward. Her chin might be down sometimes. Very rushed in her movements, very mechanical, very stiff. She might also be clumsy, not incredibly so, but a little awkward, maybe not feeling graceful. She could be so rushed and disembodied that she's bumping into things. I've worked with many clients who, again, these are extremely successful women. They are not causing chaos and knocking things over and unable to perform at work, but it's just, you're walking to the next meeting and you bump into the table with your leg, or you knock something off of your desk just because you're so tightly wound up in your mind. You're problem solving, you're planning, you're executing, etc. You're giving instructions, you're leading, you're way up here, and basically from here down becomes like a gray zone. It's foggy, it's cloudy. You really have no idea. You have no connection from here down, because you are operating always and initiating always from the mind. And so in the body language, the head goes first. The head goes first, and the movements are fast. The talking is fast. And it's not to the point where she's not functional and it's really, you know what I mean, off-putting, but it's just enough that she feels out of balance and other people subconsciously pick up on it. And again, it comes across as more masculine energy. It's not that she is completely masculine or anything like that, but it's just that the energetic presentation tends to come across more masculine. And so I really want to dig into this concept of thinking versus feeling and why we are conditioned to be that way. So one thing that I've come to understand and that I really value is being able to look at the bigger picture. I started doing this when I went on my own self-healing journey about 20 years ago. And I'm going to have to speak a little differently because of YouTube regulations. So always keep that in mind. But I had an ED, and for a long time when I sought treatment, the message was there's something, a chemical imbalance in your brain, okay, that is causing this. And I kept hearing this explanation, but my intuition, my gut was telling me, I think that this is conditioning. I think that I learned this. Because I was not having these thoughts as a child. I developed them over time. And if you have eyes, and especially in the early 2000s with diet culture and body image, if you have eyes, you will see that this is a very strong message. And not only was I receiving that message, in media and consuming media, but I was receiving those messages at home as well. So I started to take a bird's eye view and really started to look broader and not always, not always think of just myself, but think beyond myself and start looking at the larger context in which I exist. So I'm setting that up to say, I want to talk about Eastern versus Western sort of cultural, what is it? Yes, cultural norms. Okay. So why are we so prone to living in the mind in the United States? So, or in the West, if you've been influenced by the West in any way, because I know not everybody is in the United States, but the US has influenced the world globally. So you might experience these things as well. Here are some cultural norms or, paradigms within the West. Individualism, focusing on individual achievement and self-reliance, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, do it yourself, DIY. Materialism, focusing on material success. Rationalism, really prioritizing logic and empirical evidence or empiricism. And dualism, so operating in binaries, either or, red versus blue, east versus west, north versus south, this group versus that group. There's always, if you pay attention, there's always a binary happening, okay? And here are some Eastern norms or Eastern paradigms. Collectivism, which is focusing on community, family, and social harmony. So collectivism versus individualism, right, that we have in the West. Spirituality, focusing on your spiritual development instead of, material success. Holism, seeing the interconnectedness of everything. So holism is often the opposite of individualism or rationalism, which also spirituality can go against rationalism as well. And then we have non-dualism. So in the East, they're not operating in the same binaries. There's unity of opposites and fluidity between the different states. So instead of red versus blue, we have now, you can fluidly move from one side to the other and you're not locked into either or. So let's go back to the Western norms and focus on individualism and rationalism. This is why a lot of us are living in our heads. It starts very young. It starts when you go to school and you are focusing on developing one kind of intelligence, which is the sort of academic or intellectual intelligence that we focus on, very paper to pencil type of work, worksheets, tests, things of that nature. And so that is how you're growing up. If you went to a school that had an arts program, count yourself lucky, especially these days. So think about all that's being left out and how much you're sitting, right? This is very, very important because one of the reasons that I left the classroom, I was a professional educator. I still am. I just choose to teach this now instead of working in the school system because in my personal experience, number one, you are underpaid, and number two, it's not healthy. At least, a lot of these schools that I worked in, it's not healthy. There's not enough physical activity, not enough creative expression or outlets for the children. We are really focusing on one type of intelligence and sort of ignoring all the other ways that we need to develop ourselves as people. And it's not healthy, but it does prepare you to be successful in your career. So that's why I said we don't need to get rid of all of those things. I don't want you to stop using your rational brain or using logic. No one is saying that. Go ahead and use your logical thinking to come to that conclusion right now. What I'm saying is that we have overemphasized it to the point where we now don't have any kind of mind-body intelligence. We only have mind intelligence. That's why the Masculina boss babe often feels like she's presenting too much masculine energy, because she does not have a strong mind-body connection. She is not in touch with feeling as a source of information. She's always leading with the mind. Your body is there to send you signals, right? The tension that you feel, the gut feeling that you get, etc. How are you supposed to be connected to your intuition when you are always running a spreadsheet or a deep analysis in your mind and operating in, the thinking? This is why it's important, if the Masculina boss babe desires to balance her energy and bring the feminine confidence, the feminine intelligence back, that she starts to connect to the body and to feel again, feel connected to other people. When you're growing up in a culture that focuses on individualism, you have a hard time really connecting to other people, because you're sitting in your own little seat doing your own work, or you're at your job in your own little office, right? This is why I said it's important to understand the broader context for these things, so you can stop feeling badly about them and stop blaming yourself and thinking that there's something wrong with you, because what that does is it blocks the solution and it stagnates your progress. This is why, me personally, when I was going through my own recovery and starting my self-healing journey and kind of starting this awakening, if you will, this shift within myself, my feminine energy journey, when I was seeking help for my ED and people kept telling me, there's something, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, you'll always have this issue, etc. I was just thinking, how does that help me? If I listen to you, I'm going to be stuck for the rest of my life, because there's no solution. It's something wrong with me that there's no cure for. Why would I adopt that belief? How does it serve me? So you have to be able to look at the broader context and stop thinking that there's something wrong with you. If you have difficulty tapping into the collectivism, the community-based, the social harmony, you know what I mean, feeling socially confident, which a lot of women have been reaching out to me, telling me that they feel that way. And give me just one moment, please. Sorry about that. Back to what I was saying, it's important to understand the larger cultural context so that you don't end up sort of living in that individualistic mindset of there's something wrong with you. And what I was saying before is that a lot of women are reaching out to me and letting me know that they have a difficult time connecting with others on those micro social kind of interactions, because again, they're so locked into their boss role at work that when they step out of that position and they're at the grocery store, they're at the gym, etc., they feel self-conscious. They don't know how to connect from their heart space with others in just a low level kind of social place. And so again, instead of thinking, oh my goodness, I have extreme anxiety or there's something wrong with me, you have to open up your mind and realize that some of this has come from, the environment that you grew up in, where certain things were encouraged over others, and now you're an adult, and now you realize that you know what I mean, may have developed some parts of yourself along the way that you want to recalibrate. So that's all we're doing. We're recalibrating. There's a place for individualism and there's a place for collectivism. You are an individual within the community. You want both. You want both. But if you grew up in the West, you are likely leaning towards individualism, individual achievement, and you are putting a premium on rationalism and logic and empiricism versus feeling. This is when we say, oh, that's woo woo. Okay, and some of it is, some of it is, but some of it is a different kind of intelligence. And you need to have room for that conversation. And again, that's where we get into dualism in Western culture. It's either spiritual nonsense or it's science. That's a conversation I would love to have. Is it spiritual nonsense or is it science? Well, hang on. What if, you know what I mean, there's a little bit of a blend in between? Why can't we make room for more of this kind of intelligence that's based in intuition, that's based in feeling, that's based in the gut? Now they're finding out that the gut is the second brain, right? So a lot of times science is kind of catching up to the fact that there's more to us than just our ability to rationalize in terms of our intelligence. And so that's why it's important for the Masculina Boss Babe to really consider this concept of thinking versus feeling and starting to shift more to the feeling so that we can connect with the body and start connecting with our greatest source of power, which is, again, using our feelings as another source of information, specifically what we're feeling in our body. If you cannot connect to your body and feel the tension in the moment and therefore, and try to release it, that's where in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, you're going to end up with serious problems because you are unable to connect with your body and feel the signals of stress. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about today. And that's why, again, I believe the mind-body connection is so important to develop. And that's what has helped me on my feminine energy journey, is slowing down and actually connecting with my body and becoming more aware of how I'm feeling versus operating from just the mind and focusing on achievement. Because when I was doing that, that's when I ended up working in really toxic work environments, very stressful work environments. I was having chest pains because I had so much anxiety and so much stress at work. There were so many demands placed on me that I physically could not execute. I could not keep up with the requests or sort of the demands and responsibilities that kept being added at work, and it was affecting my health. But when you are disconnected from the body, you start to ignore those symptoms, right? And you push forward because you think, oh, logically, you know, I should be able to figure out a way to make this work. My body is screaming at me, but I'm so focused on what's rational, what's logical, etc., that, you know, when I go to the doctor and they say, oh, it could be from something else or whatever it is, right? Then I'm just going to go with that. And I'm going to continue pushing myself. I'm going to continue focusing on the achievement. I want to get that promotion. I want to get the recognition. Like for me, a lot of it had to do with the recognition. And that sort of thing. And so you start to go on the slippery slope of disconnecting from the body. Your body becomes basically a vehicle for your brain to walk around each day and do the job. And then after that situation, I had another time in my life where I was working three jobs all at the same time because they all underpaid me. And I just kept pushing my body, right? And ignoring the signals that it was trying to send me, the signals of stress. And so this is a really important message because chronic stress is really corrosive. It's really corrosive to our system and it's very unhealthy. And so I believe that there is a connection because I've been working with the Masculina Boss Babe for so long. I've been working with women for 15 years. I've gone through my own experience, etc. I think that all of these things are related and that we need to be talking about them as a community. So when you are really living in the mind, when you are rushing around, you have that false sense of urgency. Your validation is coming from the outside, and that's what's, propelling you to get further and further in your career, get more and more recognition, etc. And you are experiencing chronic stress as a result because you're basically living your life as a first responder all the time. Right? This is the woman who she comes into yoga, or she would come into a private lesson with me to connect to her body, and she comes in the room like stressed out and on her phone. And even having to respond and do the work starts to raise her stress levels. I was just in a call right before I hopped on today where some of the women were visibly, you know what I mean? Their energy started to visibly become more stressed out when they were talking about needing to respond to a client. We do not need to go there in our bodies because we're so disconnected from them. We don't know how to manage all those feelings and to manage that stress and to soothe and to slow down. We don't need to be elevated all the time while we are working on becoming successful and high performing and all of those things. You don't want to take the stress in your body with you. You can't. It's not going to work. It's unhealthy. And that's why in my program, the Boss to Goddess program, we focus on movement first and reestablishing that connection, that mind-body connection, and bringing the softness and the slowness and the grace and the beauty and the pleasure back. Because if you are a Masculina Boss Babe, there is little to no pleasure in how you're moving and how you're energetically operating in the world, right? Again, you are the woman who's going to and from Pilates on her phone and, oh, I've got to get this done. And then I've got to go over here. And oh my gosh, I'm anxious about that thing happening later, or then you have the anxiety of, oh, I'm supposed to go out on a date, but I feel anxious because I haven't been on a date in forever and I don't know how to, walk in a dress and a pair of heels. And so you have this low grade anxiety and chronic stress going on, but you're highly functioning and you're highly successful. So you're not really thinking like you've been told that, oh, this is just, some people have anxiety. Some people have anxiety. Okay, maybe, but let's look at the bigger picture. Anyone who would be living like that would have the same symptoms. Anyone who is constantly in their mind, constantly rushing, hustling, going, doing, feeling stress in doing their job like there's not enough time. Anybody who's gulping for air when they talk, again, that's a lot of that is environmental. You're coming from a a time and a place that's very individualistic, very focused on materialism, and very much focused on the left brain type of thinking and the either or. So there's no room for you to actually slow down and be in your body. So maybe you don't just, maybe you're just not one of those people who has this or has chronic stress or has chronic anxiety. Maybe it's the environment and the lifestyle and the choices that you're making, the choices that you've been programmed and conditioned to make. Because as we've talked about before, you just have to admit that in the West, this is sort of a toxic masculine patriarchal system. We don't even have vacation time as compared to another, like European country or Europe as a whole, right? There's not a national, in the US, there's no nationwide maternity leave program for women who give birth, go through a major physical change. I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear, oh, this stuff, feminine, masculine energy, it's not real, it doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The devaluation and sort of dismissiveness towards femininity and feminine intelligence and feminine wisdom is really obvious. It's really, really obvious. And so I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to talk about solutions. I want to talk about bringing things into balance because in my opinion, again, I've talked about this so many times, and if you choose to work with me, we are going to talk about how feminine energy comes from nature. And one of the most feminine things you can do, in my opinion, is focus on health and holistic health, seeing things as interconnected. When you've grown up in a system, a time, a place, a culture, a paradigm of things being separate, individualism, right? Separate and rationalism. Okay, so we have logic, we have empirical evidence, but we also have other things, right? We can't, or we have dualism either, or we can't just separate and compartmentalize ourselves. It's not healthy. And so part of my feminine energy journey, part of my self-healing journey has been focusing on healthy. What's the healthy choice? How do I nurture myself? Just like you would a plant. That's why I love to garden. That's why I love having plants, because it helps me connect back to my feminine energy, which is gentle. It's nurturing and it's consistent. And it's not this living in the mind, rushing, hustling, energy forward, pushing, doing more type of attitude that leads to a lifetime of chronic stress. So, what are the effects of chronic stress? When you are focused on, I've got to do it myself. If I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it correctly. You're in your masculine energy. You're controlling. You know what I mean? You are white knuckling things, etc. We have migraines. This is, the results of chronic stress over time. Migraines, depression, and anxiety. If chronic stress is the reason for your depression and anxiety, it's not just, oh, I have anxiety, this is just something that I have. No, what is causing your chronic stress? Let's go to the root of the problem. Stop just accepting it as a permanent way of being, because that's not healthy. That's not going to lead to, you know what I mean, vitality over time. Heart problems, chronic stress, heart problems, heart disease is, I want to say, the number one cause of, what are you supposed to say on YouTube? You know what I'm talking about. The number one cause of death for women in the United States is heart disease. I think you can fact check me on that. Chronic stress leads to digestive issues such as IBS. It can lead to weight gain. It can affect your fertility and your hormones as a woman, so it can affect your cycle. Why? Because when we are experiencing stress, right? You have a deadline, you have a project, whatever it is, you're, like I said, I was on a call with other businesswomen today, and even like them responding to negative comments or people online that are stressing them out in some way, potential clients, etc. If you're already starting with a low level, elevated stress response for those things, what is it going to be like when, you know, the really big things come across your table? If you're planning on being a successful boss babe, right? So we have to address that, because when we have that stress response, even if it's low grade, but it's consistent over time, so it's chronic, you are releasing more adrenaline and cortisol. There's a third one in there as well, norepinephrine. I hope I said that correctly. And these three stress hormones elevate your heart rate, elevate your blood pressure, and elevate your blood sugar levels. So over time, this is why we develop migraines, depression, anxiety, heart problems, IBS, etc. And also, I wanted to include some statistics on autoimmune disease, because autoimmune disease, this is really interesting. According to the NIH, 8% of the population is affected by autoimmune disease. And I assume since it's the NIH, it's talking about the United States. 8% of the population is affected by autoimmune disease. 78% of that population affected by autoimmune disease, 78% are women. That is a very significant statistic. And one of the potential causes of autoimmune disease is chronic stress. Chronic stress. It is also, autoimmune disease is also the third most common category of disease in the US after cancer and heart disease. So this is important to consider. It's important to consider balancing your energy and getting out of the rushing and the hustling and the, you know what I mean? Because I talk to the Masculina boss babe all day long. Okay, I know her and I can hear her right now, you know, oh, everything's going really well. You know, work is going really well, but you know, she has some side project that she's working on because her job is not enough. If she's not advancing in her career the way that she wants to, she's going to take on something outside of her job, like a side hustle or a networking or something like that, right? And she's going to spread herself thin because she cannot not be in her mind planning and doing and pushing things forward. And again, it's not wrong. It's not wrong to desire a certain kind of trajectory in your life. And I want you to go ahead and do it, but I don't want you to do it from a place of imbalanced energy that's leading to chronic stress, because you're not sleeping, you don't feel good, you're not taking any time to take care of your body, and you're not connected to how you're feeling. you're only thinking about, you know what I mean, your thoughts and your individual achievement. So I can hear her right now. Work is going well, but I've got this thing that I'm working on, that side project, and I don't have any help. I have to do it all myself. And then I have this other thing that I've got to go to, and then I'm supposed to go on a date, and I'm just, and then this happened, and I'm just, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do. Babe, it's almost like you're inventing more ways to make yourself stressed out, because you cannot just focus on being. You don't think that being is enough. You don't know what your soft power is, right? You keep defaulting to, okay, well, this is the way I have to do it in this corporate system. You know what I mean? And one of the things that we've talked about, and I posted this on my Instagram, and it's so important for you to understand, is that especially in the West, all of the examples of leadership and success that we have, or 99% of them, right, default back to the masculine way. And so if you're a masculine boss babe, that's part of it. You keep thinking that you have to do it the way that the men have done it, but you don't. You don't. There is another way. Your femininity is actually an advantage, because you don't just have the power of the mind, you have the power of your intuition. You can see the bigger picture. You see the interconnectedness and everything. You operate from a holistic place. And let's go ahead and this will be a good time to support that point by reminding everyone of the study that was published. I don't know if it was this year, I want to say earlier this year, that female physicians have better patient outcomes than male physicians. One of which being a lower mortality rate. Why? Because they are better able to connect with the patients, they have better communication, and they're seeing things from a more holistic point of view. It's been a minute since I read the article that referenced the study, so I hope I'm pulling the pieces, but those were some that I remember. And so there's an advantage here. There's a feminine advantage. We've already talked about this on my channel, but again, if you are so locked into the thinking and you just have this knee-jerk reaction anytime you hear somebody talk about feminine energy, and you're like, that's not real, and you go immediately into the this or that, it's either feminine or it's masculine, and feminine means staying at home in the 1950s and you know what I mean, being submissive and everything and whatever. And so you lose the nuance. You lose the nuance. So we want to really, the solution for the masculine boss babe is to get back into her body. To get back into her body and to get her to slow down, stop rushing, and start to develop that mind-body connection so it can be used as a form of intelligence. So that now, again, the grace training, what I like to do in my program, helping women become more graceful, more elegant, more sensual in their movement, is so that they can understand what it feels like to be fluid and smooth and relaxed and flowy, so that they can recognize when they're in the opposite state of stiffness, rigidity, and tension, right? And that's what's leading to a lot of the chronic stress, when you hold yourself in that tension. So the embodiment training is really important. That feminine movement can be extremely healing, especially if you've spent years, if not a decade or more, of your life feeling really stiff, really rushed, really anxious, really awkward, really closed off. It can be extremely helpful. And like I said, we need a reference point to then be able to distinguish between when we are living in the mind. And so we catch ourselves, my students and clients over time begin to catch themselves of, oh my goodness, I'm overthinking, I'm rushing, I'm caught up in my mind. Let me slow down and reconnect to the body and see how I'm feeling. Why am I feeling anxious about this? Right? What can I do to take care of myself right now? And that doesn't mean, oh, every day that I'm stressed out, I'm going to take off work and go get a spa day. No, you have to still operate within, you know what I mean, your job setting successfully, because again, I want you to be successful, wealthy, and healthy. But how do you take care of yourself now that you've tapped into that feeling, and how can you bring that into your daily experience? So maybe at work that looks like taking a few deep breaths, slowing down when you talk. Maybe not, if you're running late to the meeting, do you think that rushing to the door and rushing inside and speaking, quickly and apologetically, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, do you think that that's going to help anything? Right? Are people going to perceive you as confident and competent when you're rushing around everywhere? No. So you have to learn, again, how to operate with both pieces, get more into the interconnected place of that sort of Eastern paradigm versus the Western, which is highly individual and separate. And so bringing the feeling in, especially feeling the body and feeling the places that you're holding the tension, feeling the places that you're holding the shame or other negative emotions, etc., in your body, and learning how to release them and move through them with fluidity, grace, and beauty is so wonderful and so healing and so empowering for the Masculina Boss Babe. It's incredible to watch her transformation. And with my private clients, what this looks like, it's actually very visible to me, even on camera, even through the Zoom, because most of my private clients are, all throughout the country, some international. So I can see it through the Zoom and how her body language changes and how she starts to move differently and how she starts to develop, again, that intelligence of, oh, I felt myself getting really tense. And instead of going into the mind immediately and having self-conscious thoughts, which only makes it worse, and overthinking, what are other people thinking about me? Do they notice? Do I look awkward, et cetera, et cetera? You take it back down into the body and you learn how to transmute that energy and release it through those fluid and soft movements. And by being connected to the breath, staying connected to the present instead of shifting up into the mind and going into what if and into all these invented scenarios, which is in some ways self-inflicted mental suffering, which is what a lot of people say about Western culture and how we operate, is that we create a lot of our own suffering in the mind. That's why, again, thinking has its role. Thinking has its role, and I don't want you to stop thinking. But we want to bring in the feeling. So thinking is the rationality, the problem solving, and the detachment from the rest of our body, from our emotions, etc. And this is a good skill to have. Especially, let's say, if you are a physician, right? You need to be able to think rationally in the moment and not get caught up in the emotions of everybody around you. But we want to have that skill without losing the other skill, which if you grew up in a culture that didn't promote it, again, you've been taught that it's not as valid or it's not as necessary, and that is incorrect. We need both. So feeling is the emotion, it's the intuition, and it's the connection to our bodies, with ourselves, and to others, the collectiveness, right? Collectivism. So we need both. Connection is so important. It's so important, and you don't always want to connect from just the mind. You want to be able to connect from the heart, especially if you desire to, tap into your femininity and your feminine energy. So I think I'm just going to leave it there. That's enough for you to think about right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, but I just want to, I guess, reinforce this point one last time before we close. If you are a masculina boss babe, or someone who feels like you are presenting too much of your masculine energy, I want you to not feel bad about it and realize that a lot of us have been encouraged to do so, especially if you grew up in the West, okay? So we have certain paradigms here in the West that have encouraged us to really be living in our heads. And it's time to bring things back into balance so that we can decrease that anxiety, kind of that chronic stress that a lot of women are experiencing. And we can learn how to soften, learn how to become more connected with ourselves, strengthen our mind-body connection to bring us back to a place of more balance. And one of the ways that I can help my clients do that is by helping them with their feminine energy. The very basis for feminine energy, in the way that I teach it, it comes from nature, and it comes from self-nurturing, which is gentle, not hard, not forcing. It's focused on pleasure and experience. So how are you supposed to be? I said I was done, but now like I'm getting into a deeper point of it. How are you supposed to embody that goddess Monica Bellucci energy when you are, you know what I mean, in intellectual debate mode all the time in your mind? And this does not mean that a feminine woman cannot be intellectually intelligent. I'm saying that there's an embodiment that needs to take place. The reason why when you see pictures or footage of these types of women, you feel so drawn to them, they feel so magnetic, is because there's an experience happening there that you want to partake in, that you're drawn to, that you're intrigued by. It's not always coming from the mind. You just feel a pull, right? You feel a pull towards them. Why? Because they are really connected to themselves in a holistic, integrated way. That woman, that goddess archetype woman, is not rushing, is not hustling, is not pushing, is not, you know what I mean, convincing, oversharing, etc. She just is. So again, that's another reason, if not the reason, why we need to shift and balance the thinking with the feeling if you desire to shift from the boss to the goddess. Shifting from the boss to the goddess does not mean that we stop being the boss. What it means is we are now a boss in a different way, a more goddess way. We have more soft power. We have more influence, appeal, and attraction, not just professional competency. That's one of the biggest benefits for embracing your femininity. If you are a masculina boss babe out there and you're nervous and you're thinking, you know, I don't want this to make me weak, etc., it's going to do the opposite. You're going to feel more empowered. But if you want that feminine confidence, especially that goddess type of energy outside of the workplace, really just focusing on you as a woman, you cannot bring your work brain and your way of operating in that mind with you everywhere. You have to be able to feel. There are ways of communicating where you are and you know what I mean? What you think, what you feel without even speaking a word. Your energy should communicate for you. And when you look over and you see a woman who is relaxed, there's no more tension in her body. She's not up here. She's not self-conscious. She's not overthinking, not trying to dominate the conversation, prove her point, etc. She's relaxed and she's in her pleasure. That is the most attractive and most, what's the form of the word? It is one of the greatest aphrodisiacs, is a relaxed woman. Not, oh, I'm relaxed, saying that she's relaxed, but having the energy of relaxation and sensuality that is what's the word? I wanted to say dynamic, but that's not it. That's kind of the ultimate combination, relaxed plus sensual. But you can't get there if you're too uptight, if you're too much in the mind. So I'm going to close now. And if that is you, if you are uptight, if you are tense, if you are rigid, etc., because of your conditioning, because of this kind of masculina boss babe lifestyle, then I want you to come to my next movement class. It's a feminine movement class. It's on August 4th. It's called Secrets of Soft and Silky Movement, because I want you to already start feeling and imagining how it's going to feel. Stop thinking so much and focus on the feeling. I want it to feel soft and silky, and it's going to have that quality that is highly magnetic and highly desirable, because everybody's going to get that feeling of luxury, of smoothness when they see you walk by. So Secrets of Soft and Silky Movement, which is a feminine movement masterclass, is going to be on August 4th. It's in the afternoon on a Sunday, because I know that, with weekday work schedules and the fact that I have so many people who are interested in attending classes from different time zones, oftentimes internationally, I wanted to set it kind of at a time where more people could join. So it's going to be on a Sunday afternoon. I highly recommend that you attend live. If you are serious about this, if you're interested, if you're curious, come live and you will experience it for yourself. It's going to be on August 4th, 1 p.m. Central Time. I'll put the link in the description box below. But again, if you are a masculina boss babe who has been conditioned to live in the mind, and therefore you're disconnected from the body, we don't have the mind-body intelligence, we're in chronic stress, we're not relaxed, we're not embodied, we're not sensual, we don't feel feminine, we don't need to do a paper pencil study. What we need to do is move. You learn by doing and experiencing, and allow me, come on August 4th and allow me to help you get back into the body in a soft, smooth, elegant, feminine way that's going to start to shift your mind-body connection to a place that is more healthy. And it's going to kind of open things up for you in terms of your feminine energy journey. Okay. So sign up for class. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I already said, let me hear your comments and your thoughts below. But just as a reminder, I love to hear the discussion. And make sure that you like this video and that you subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. I will be back soon with another topic. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video.